And welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Danny Cannell. That's Bud Elliott. I'm Tom Fornelli. If you're joining us live here on YouTube, please hit the like and subscribe buttons. If you're listening to us later, you're still cool too. We still love you. On today's show, we're doing a mailbag because tomorrow is the NFL draft. So instead of doing it on Thursday, we're going to have kind of a draft special tomorrow. We moved the mailbag up a day to Wednesday. Chip is not here. Do not worry. He's not in prison. He is just moving. So he'll be back maybe tomorrow. I don't know. Is Chip back tomorrow? Do you guys know?
That's a big house he's moving into.
Man, can't hide money.
No. I mean, or, you know, maybe Dion just kicked Chip off the show. Maybe Dion told Chip it was time for him to start looking elsewhere after seeing his performance in the spring game. But we'll get to more on that later. Before we get to Colorado, let's start with some other news that kind of took place this weekend. We were expecting, while everybody has been focused on what's going on in Boulder, Boulder is not the only place where players enter the transfer portal once spring games resume. Notre Dame played their spring game over the weekend, and shortly afterward, Tyler Buchner, the quarterback who began last season as a starter, got hurt, lost the job to Drew Pine, entered the transfer portal. And it's been an interesting situation because, as we talked about on Monday's show, a lot of schools out there right now probably thinking, you know what, we could use a little bit more at the quarterback department. We talked about a few of them, and one of those schools is Alabama, where we were wondering how the Tide felt after seeing their quarterback struggle in the spring game. Anybody know where the guy who chose Tyler Buchner to be his starting quarterback last year at Notre Dame is coaching now?
Oh. Is he in Tuscaloosa?
I believe so. I believe Tommy Rees is the new offensive coordinator at Alabama. So there has been some kind of dot connecting there. I don't know how legitimate any of that is, but we've talked about it. Alabama might be in the market. Auburn might be in the market. Florida might be in the market. A lot of places might be in the market. But those are three big schools in the SEC that we think are, at least sniffing around. But do we think Tyler Buchner was a 4-star prospect coming out of high school? As I mentioned, he earned the job at Notre Dame before getting hurt. Do we think he's like a legitimate target for any of those schools, or is this somebody who might be going, quote unquote, down a notch to find playing time elsewhere?
I had a lot of thoughts on this yesterday when it came out. The first one is if you are playing as Alabama on dynasty mode on NCAA and your quarterbacks don't look any good in the spring game, and you look to the portal and it's Tyler Buchner or Ben Bryant, don't you kind of disconnect and you pull the cord real quick and you hope the game resets and some different guys pop up? So Buchner was a pretty highly rated recruit. He was also a dude in that COVID class. You guys have heard me say this for a long time. I think that the rankings for the entire recruiting industry for the COVID class are going to be orders of magnitude worse than a normal year because a lot of guys didn't play, including him, their senior year of high school. Like, I have no idea what he would have ended up rated had he played. In college so far, the guy has been terrible. I mean, under 5 yards net adjusted per attempt. Yes, he tore up South Carolina in the bowl game, kind of, but hey, we all on this show bet the crap out of Notre Dame because we knew all those dudes were out for South Carolina, and he also threw 2 horrendous pick sixes. He was bad against Marshall. He was bad against Ohio State. So if you're an Alabama fan and Tyler Buchner is presented in any way as a solution to your quarterback issue, it's time to panic. I wouldn't lump Florida and Auburn in, though, with Bama. Like, I do think that those schools may be more of an option. And for him, perception-wise, where's the downside to other schools thinking that Alabama might have interest in you? It's always great. Prospects claim fake Alabama offers all the time.
I actually have an Alabama offer. Just want to throw that out there.
I think there's some rumblings out there too. I mean, we've talked about it when Tyler Van Dyke, like, why was there interest from Bama? And we didn't see them exactly light it up in their spring game. So maybe there's a little bit concern, and maybe one of them pans out, but competition is always good. That's what I do. That's what I think will be the big tell, because Tommy Rees has now seen both his quarterbacks in Tuscaloosa. He's seen Buchner. If they take him, I'm a little more worried about Alabama's quarterback situation. If they don't, then I'm like, all right, like, you knew you had the option most likely to get Buchner in there. And if you're like, nah, we're good. Like, even though, we have familiarity, like, we're good, then you have to feel a little bit better about it. The other aspect of this, and I'm curious to know what you guys think, and maybe this is a case-by-case basis, but I hate the optics of Buchner putting out a tweet that's, it's a love letter to Notre Dame that says, "Dear Notre Dame, I love the time we've spent together. What a great time it's been working with the staff and all my teammates. But I'm going to go into the portal and just see my options, see what they are out there, see if there's any better opportunities. And if not, Coach Freeman has made it clear I'm coming back. Like, I can come back." There's something about that rubs me the wrong way. I think it probably depends on each situation. You also brought in Sam Hartman, right? Like, to take your job. So that probably wasn't the most fair thing that happened. And maybe that's why Marcus Freeman is even letting this happen, because some coaches may have more of a hardline policy of don't come back if you enter the portal. But he has the red flag, right? He's got the red check mark that says don't contact me in the portal, which I guess, says, hey, he already has a couple places in mind that he is already seeking. But if I'm Marcus Freeman and he comes into my office and he tells me he's considered transferring, I almost feel like, can you do this quietly? And then once you go, you go. And if you don't, I don't care if we tamper. Go ahead and talk to schools. I know that's illegal, but have your people reach out, see what's out there. I just don't like the optics of this. I think it could undermine a locker room when you see some guys treated differently that are allowed to come back and some aren't.
You never use that approach with a girl you were in a relationship with?
Right.
It was
I've tried.
It's like,
I got away with it in high school too, with some,
I've loved our time together, and it's got absolutely nothing to do with you. It's just I'm in a place right now where I feel like I'm not ready for this. I have to move on. It makes you feel better about yourself, at least. I don't know. I have no idea how they feel about it, but it made me feel good about it.
It's the classic, we'll see how things are in the fall, but it's the summer now. Right? That's kind of the play.
KIT. Have a great summer.
Yeah. Marcus Freeman's yearbook here with Buchner. I get it, and I'm a little tired of all these the love letters to the fan bases and whatnot that look like they were written by ChatGPT. But Kenny Minchie outplayed him as well, and it would not be at all a shock to see Kenny Minchie over Tyler Buchner on the quarterback depth chart this fall for the Irish. He just, hasn't looked good to me. Now, maybe a change of scenery. The guy has some physical talent, just doesn't seem to be able to understand where to go with the ball. Right?
Yeah, see, that was always my kind of, when I've seen Buchner, granted, it's been a very, very limited sample size. We've also discussed at length last year the lack of playmaking options that were on that Notre Dame offense. So and that's one of the more interesting side things about this to me is now that Buckner's in the portal, Drew Pine has already left. If both of them play well in their new stops, it'll kind of give us ammunition for the things we were saying about the Notre Dame offense last year. But anyways, I just think with Buchner, when I have seen him play, he strikes me as far more prospect than quarterback to this point. And maybe it clicks, maybe it takes off and he gets in the right situation, whether it's, Auburn or Florida or somewhere. He gets in the right situation and begins to play well and flourishes. I'm not ruling that out. It's just from what I have seen. I don't know. I don't know if I'd be excited if my team added Tyler Buchner, just to be honest with you. Speaking of,
well, not if my team is Alabama and I'm trying to win a national title.
But if you're
my
Florida,
team is Auburn,
competition.
I don't know that Buchner is that much better than Mertz. Yeah,
is he better than Mertz? Because
I don't know.
At least you got an option. At least you got. I would say, yeah, you try. And I've always felt like you try to collect quarterbacks, and you tell the guy, hey, if you don't win the job, transfer the next year. But at this point, from what we've seen from Auburn and Florida, I would be willing to take them. Say, yeah, I'm not guarantee you anything, but you can come and compete in the spring, or injury happens, you could have an opportunity. It's wide open. Come compete. I think you need that depth. And from what we've seen, they don't have the answer yet.
I'm higher on Mertz than I think most are. I'm not as high on the offensive line transfers that the Gators took. So I thought when he was reasonably protected, he was okay. But there's no guarantee he's going to have protection this fall. Buchner can run around a little bit.
Yeah, that's useful. Speaking of guys who are being run around, 18 Colorado Buffaloes hit the transfer portal on Monday. Their spring game, we talked about it during Monday's show, was on Saturday. It was the only one broadcast on television. Dion was wearing a cowboy hat, really playing to the locals already. And not playing to the guys on his roster, because based on what you're reading in stories at different websites, including CBSSports.com, I mean, he made it clear when he showed up. Like we all saw the press, the welcome, talking to the team. They put it on social media where it was, I'm bringing my bags and they're Louis. And if you're not part of this, you got to pack your bags. You're going to be getting out of here. And we've gone over it at length. And I mean, he's sticking to his word, because 18 players hit the portal on Monday after the spring game. The total number of players who have left in the offseason since Deion took over the job is now up to 46. I don't know the math on this, but I think there are 10 players left that were actual contributors on scholarship last year's team still on the roster. And this is easily the most, I don't know, like over the top, I guess is a way to put it, like overhaul of a roster in the transfer portal era that we have seen a coach coming into his first season. Like, is Colorado going to have enough players to field a team in the fall? Because I understand that you can bring in transfers, but are there enough transfers to bring in?
I think they're at 63 scholarship players accounted for, and which means I think they have 19 committed to come in the fall, and so they can add 22 more if I'm correct about that.
Mm-hmm.
Which is sort of insane. I talked to some coaches this morning on the phone about this, and a couple of G5s too, because I'm like, okay, Colorado as a roster is essentially like a mid-level G5 with a couple superstars on it, right? Who otherwise would be plucked away through the portal, like Travis Hunter and those type of guys. Man, it's really interesting to watch this unfold. A couple questions. Like, yes, Deion is correct in that he said, like, look, a lot of these guys are going to be gone. We're going to run a lot of y'all off. And I don't want to really get into the morality of that right now, unless you guys do. But, okay, so those guys are gone. I don't think all the guys who left are dudes that Colorado actually wanted to leave. I think a couple of the receivers they probably would have wanted to keep. Clearly, given the fact that they only have 3 scholarship defensive linemen on the roster, they didn't want to lose their 5th-year starting nose guard. Even if the fan base doesn't think the guy's good, like he's good enough to start in a Power 5 league and play all 12 games and not play terribly. They lost a starting linebacker. So I was talking to coaches, I'm like, okay, can you find 3 or 4 Power 5 quality defensive linemen right now? Can you find 2 corners? And I think 7 of their 10 projected scholarship receivers are true freshmen or somewhere, or maybe red shirts like that. That's kind of wild. These coaches, even I talked to a G5 guy, he runs a personnel department. He's like, they're going to be taking some major reaches unless they have a lot bigger names jump in than is currently in the portal. Like if we had to take 20 more guys right now, we would be taking a lot of guys who can't play here. So that'll be interesting. And then another thing to throw out here, how do you convince dudes to come to be backups? Because like it's already hard enough if you're a Georgia or an Ohio State or somebody chasing a natty to be like, hey man, leave your starting gig. Come be a backup here. You will play some, you won't start, but you might win a ring. Like you're not an NFL guy anyway. Here's a little NIL money. That's a hard sell. Not a lot of schools are able to pull that off. Colorado isn't playing for anything. One of the only things they have to sell, well, they have a couple things to sell. Playing time, if you're going to be a starter, but probably not much if you're a backup. And the fact that you get to be on the TV show, right? And maybe there's some NIL associated with that, depending on what kind of deal you work out. He's definitely doing what he said he would do in terms of shipping it out. But I'm not seeing the Louis come in yet. Where's the Louis?
That to me is like we're gonna find out if he's the Pied Piper or not. Because like, what do you go for? You go to play for primetime. You're going. I mean, this is Deion Sanders, the brand. Like that's what he's been selling. That's what Colorado brought him in. That's why the stadium was packed. I think this is partly part of the process. Like, but I thought there was a couple interesting things. And Bud, you sent us this. I was not aware of this. That they made such a big deal out of players who earned the numbers. Right? There were only 13 players, I think you said, that earned the numbers, and 3 of them entered the portal. Like to me, that would say that 3 of those guys they probably wanted. Like if they valued the way they were practicing, performing, buying into the culture, they give them a number, right? That's a reward. So those 3 probably hurt. the Jackson State guy that comes with him. That's obviously somebody they knew, and he decides to bail on Dion, like, who was very well aware of the culture of what was happening and what he was going to bring there. He decides to leave. There's a couple red flags for me. I texted you guys this yesterday. I'm going to take the under. I mean, I know Joe Klatt's fired up and everybody loved the atmosphere that was there. And Joe Klatt says 6 wins is what we're getting. And I just think it's going to be a rough year. And then it gets really interesting. Like, does the Dion effect still work? And can you carry the Dion effect after a bad season to recruiting and the transfer portal? I think that to me is the big question mark. Or does this thing completely come off the rails? Because I think that's a possibility.
Like the idea of a new coach kind of running off players is not new. Like it happens everywhere. Every time a new coach takes over, we have not seen it in this large of a number where this much of a team is being kind of, shown the door after spring practice. But that's another aspect of this. There's been 46 players, whatever, that have hit the portal since Dion took over. 18 more take off the Monday after the spring game. Did you accomplish anything this spring if half your team is leaving after you finish spring practice? Like, what has the last 2 weeks been doing?
Right. I mean,
I would say evaluating. I think you're still evaluating because see, here's the thing that I don't know. Of these guys that left, how many of them were they coach? Because if you guys seen the clip like that he said on Monday where he predicted we're going to have a mass exodus, we're going to see a lot of guys leave, and then he challenges every player. He's like, go in, ask your coach where you stand with the program. Like, ask him what he thinks of your job. Do you have a future here? Like, basically, I mean, that's what it sounded like. What I don't know, if some of those players were borderline, that maybe they were coaching really hard because they want them to step up and like improve, and we can do it, but hey, you got to get a lot better. Like, maybe those players didn't respond to that messaging and there was a miscommunication, and then they're bounced and they're out, versus the guys that they're like, you're just not good enough, please go. Like, that's what I would love to know, like the difference in their war room where they have a list of the entire roster and there's a red line somewhere on there that says, these are the guys we want, these are the guys we don't. How many of them that they wanted have they lost? And I think we know, I would say pretty confidently, probably 3 to 5 you've lost that you wanted. Maybe that number is a lot bigger, but until I know that, like, he said he was going to do it. Now, like the tight end that posted the picture and like said he wasn't getting the film, that's welcome to the big leagues, man. That's like, it's a harsh reality. But if you think they're going to like give your film and just hand it to you, you probably should have planned that out before you left, because you probably could have gone into the film guy and said, hey, man, can you give me some highlights? And they would have done it for you. But to ask for it after, like, when you're in the portal, that's not the way things work. I don't think anywhere. Bud, you might have.
Well, no, Jim Moore came out and said that we believe it's actually our mission as college coaches to help these guys. And like, if you want your film, they'll help you get to another school. We'll give it to you. I mean, look, if I'm that kid, Colorado is a public school, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm suing under FOIA.
FLIA, that stuff. Yep.
Open records. Yeah. Really? Like that's part of my academic record and my thing here. Come on.
Because a scholarship you technically can't get out of, right? I mean, a lot of these do 4-year scholarships, right?
I know the Big
Well,
Ten
a lot of the
does. I don't
schools
know
will
about
keep
the
paying
Pac-12.
for it. You just don't count against the number.
Right.
So, all right, like, if we just construe all of the factors like in the light most favorable to Colorado, let's just assume, and this is not true because we know that there's about 5 guys that definitely would have helped them this year if they had stayed on the roster, because there's guys that they lost who are just, there's not better players than the dudes they lost in the portal. Think about this. Even if they all sucked, that everybody they lost was not going to play. Think about the challenges you have of incorporating 40 new guys in early August. They're scheme-wise, and they're running a really simple offensive scheme. And I did talk to some coaches about this morning. They said, look, they'll actually probably be okay there because they run that, old Baylor offense that Sean Lewis runs, and that's something that, it's not a lot of plays. You can get guys in. But there's also like culture, team building, all that kind of stuff. And guess what? You play 11 Power 5 games. That there could be some issues with trying to build a team in the portal this late. And to Danny's point about what you got done in the spring window evaluation, you know what you're not able to do? Evaluate these guys on your own team. What if you get a couple of these portal dudes in and you realize, oh damn, none of these guys are actually any good, right? This is problematic. So I'm interested in that.
Hopefully they got their practice tape from the place they left. You can evaluate that.
By the way, the time to bet Colorado under, if you wanted to bet a win total this early, was Saturday, because it went from 4.5 juice over and it's all the way down to 3.5 juice under.
Really?
So it dropped a whole win when people saw that Colorado's players look like me and you and Tom.
Here's a question from Hot Danger. Will Colorado have more losses or carryover players from last year's team? I think Vegas has them both at 10 right now.
That's pretty good.
That's great.
I think they have fewer losses than they do carryover players. That's my final answer. But that's
they're
a good
at
question.
So the latest note I have is 16 guys that are still on the roster from last year's team.
I mean, that's like, there was another question too from somebody in there, and you kind of touched on it a bit. Let me find the question. It was how many of the 46 actually get picked up on other P5 rosters? I don't know, but depth, like, it's a long season for not even just like team chemistry and knowing what you're doing. You're going to suffer injuries. So it's not necessarily, oh, these guys are surefire starters, but it's like, it's nice to have somebody on the bench who is familiar with the playbook if somebody goes down. So yeah, it's going to be a problem. I think I just, maybe they get it all together. Maybe he hits the portal really hard over these next few months. Maybe they fill out the roster really well and they start the season on fire. I don't know. I'm not skeptical long-term, but I'm from what I've seen this offseason, very skeptical about Colorado in 2023.
I'm skeptical long-term to the extent of Danny's question, which is like, how long does the celebrity factor matter here?
Like if they go 2-10?
Yeah. Are kids going to sign up for that regardless? Okay. So guys who they've lost, who have gone to other Power 5 programs.
I got a couple here. Jarek Broussard going to Michigan State.
Michigan State, yep.
We don't count Boise, right? So I'm at 3.
Brendan Rice going to USC.
Yeah. Casey Roddick went to Florida State.
I got Dimitri Stanley going to Iowa State.
So there's, I mean,
wait, when did Brendan Rice leave? I thought it was last year.
No, Brendan Rice was on USC last year.
Oh, so
you're looking at the prior year. So I think they're at 4 that have gone to Power 5 schools already, and probably a couple that will end up that just jumped in this week. So I don't know. It's at the over under like 6.5, which does speak to the roster. Dion's right about that. This is a bad roster, but you could use all 6 of those guys still.
Yeah, nobody is going to criticize Deion Sanders for thinking he needs to overhaul that roster. It's just he might be going a little too heavy. He might be going a little too hard to start and getting his, out ahead of his skis a little bit. There you go. That's some good Colorado analogy right there for you. Everybody loves to ski in Colorado. Well, it was a mailbag, so we should probably get to the mailbag. But before we do that, let's hit the break.
Absolutely magisterial here.
How should you feel about your team's latest draft picks? You should feel great about them. They're all wonderful kids, and they're all going to be superstars. The people in charge of your team are doing a wonderful job. Maybe I'm full of it. If you really want to know how you should feel about your team's latest draft picks, listen to With the First Pick podcast. It's your source for comprehensive draft coverage and pick breakdowns with CBS Sports draft expert Ryan Wilson and longtime general manager Rick Spielman. Ryan and Rick will recap each day of the draft, dishing out winners and losers from all 7 rounds, and the draft chatter doesn't stop on Saturday. Stay tuned to the show for team-by-team draft grades, an early look at who your team could be eyeing next year. Download and follow With the First Pick podcast wherever you find this one. All right, so with the first pick of the Cover 3 College Football Podcast mailbag, I'm going to go with little hidden gems for 2023 question. Chad writes, long live Barton, fade Bud 2023. Ooh, buddy's going to fade you in 20. He thinks you were a little too hot there. He said DK secretly funded the Gator Collective. Chip hates UNC. Tom, you're okay. Thumbs up emoji. Question. Many fans outside the Big Ten didn't know Iowa had a potential first rounder in Sam Laporta because of how gross Iowa's offense was. Going into the 2023 season, are there any hidden gems on defenses or offenses that you expect to be bad? P.S. After listening for 5 years, I finally came up with a question worth sending. I think he means, are there going to be any bad offenses or bad defenses with like actual talented NFL draft picks on them this year that we can look forward to?
Well, it is hard to predict who won't start until we see the final thing, right? All right.
Well, I got one for you.
Yeah, who you got?
A little trollish here. Tyler Van Dyke, the quarterback of Miami. That offense might stink. I think Tyler Van Dyke is going to be an NFL draft prospect.
I was going to go with somebody on that offense as well. I actually think Elijah Arroyo, the tight end they got.
Ooh, yep.
I'm still kind of a believer in him. They lost Will Mallory, who I do think, if he stays healthy, could be a pretty good pro. Travis Hunter is a really good one, actually. Do you know that like the top 4 receivers on Jackson State last year all signed with Power 5?
Yeah.
That's like if Colorado went and got 5 players from the AFC to play receiver. Like the gap between the SWAC and the Power 5 is enormous. I mean, like the worst Power 5 team would win the SWAC by a ton. Like that's something interesting to watch how they play when they don't have a huge talent advantage. But Travis Hunter's a good one.
Connor Wegman. Is that a troll for Texas A&M? I mean, they were bad last year.
I mean, that's kind of, it's a talented team. It's just, I don't know how good the offense is going to be. Yeah.
How about Ricky Pearsall at Florida? I legitimately think he's a pretty good player, and their passing offense might suck again.
I don't know how good or bad the offense will be, but I know this. I look at this one as an aspect of this isn't a team people are going to be watching, like looking out for. Arizona's got 2 guys on offense I think will prove to be like draft picks, maybe not first rounders, but guys who will go in the early rounds. Jacob Cowing at wide receiver, who transferred there from UTEP before last season. I think that's an NFL player. And on their offensive line at tackle, they have a guy named Jordan Morgan, who I think will be drafted next year. So those are 2 dudes on the Arizona offense. I think most people have no idea who they are. And then another one from the Big Ten, like this is not, it's kind of like the Iowa situation, like Sam Laporta, a tight end on a offense doesn't really put up numbers. Minnesota has a tight end in Brevin Spanford, who I think he was 2nd or 3rd on their team in catches last year. It's not exactly a prolific passing attack, but he is a good player in it, and he's also he's a better blocker than Sam Laporta is. So I think as far as like a 2-way kind of inline blocker with receiving ability, Brevin Spanford is somebody with the Gophers that I would keep my eye on.
I like that. Evan Stewart got suggested in the chat. That's probably a pretty good one, actually. Who else here? I'm trying to think like teams that'll be bad offenses, but might be.
What about Graham Mertz? Lando 7448 says Mertz at Florida.
Possibly. Yeah, this is a fun question.
I'm confused on the question. So you're trying to find great players that were on bad or going to be bad this year.
Like good players that'll be on a bad offense, or like Sam Laporta
like
at Iowa
from Northwestern.
Yeah. I mean, I think Skronsky was more known than Laporta, but yeah, like it's different, I think, with offensive linemen. But yeah, like I mean, hell, look at Iowa. Eric All, Cade McNamara. These guys might be drafted from a terrible offense. I don't know.
Somebody on Stanford, probably that we're not thinking about right now, would be a
back to be named later. They're always in there.
Yeah. What about like a guy like Bub Means from Pitt? I think he's got some juice. They lost some guys at receiver because Jared Wayne's gone. I mean, I could see him. That's probably not going to be a prolific passing offense because Narduzzi's the head coach, but they have had a guy like Jordan Addison under Pat before, so maybe he catches a lot of balls. I think a Rodney Gatson at Syracuse is really good.
Call. Yeah,
and I don't have like really high hopes for Syracuse this year because they're losing several good NFL players. They lose Tucker. They lose Matthew Bergeron, who's going to be like probably top 100 type pick, like top 3 rounds, I would say, at offensive tackle. they lose a premium corner in Williams. They lose Deuce Chestnut. They lose, who else they lose? Oh, Jahad Carter is also gone. So I don't have really high hopes for them this year, but I kind of think that, Juice Wells at Carolina, especially if their offensive line is truly bad, then his ultimate production could get masked. And he came back. Jarquez Hunter. Yeah. Like, what's his top end speed wise? Like, or is he just kind of a bruiser back? I don't know. NFL wise, like if that's the question, they seem to really, really value speed at running back now.
Here's one, since we're talking about the NFL draft, from Cameron Cheek. Do Bub or Tom have any draft bets they like?
Let me see. I took some Tyree Wilson to go the first defensive player at fairly long odds, a month ago.
Yeah, I got it at plus 400 to be the second pick. That's currently at like plus 130, I think. It's a lot of people seem to think that's going to be the case. I also I put a mock draft out last week. I'm sticking to my guns. I took CJ Stroud as the first pick at 10-1.
Really?
Okay.
Yeah. I
got Bryce Young at plus 250 when it flip-flopped.
Mm-hmm.
I jumped all over that one.
I don't buy. I mean, I think it's probably going to be Bryce Young based on what everybody's saying and what I'm hearing, but 10-1 for CJ Stroud. I don't think that he just what happened that they suddenly went from CJ Stroud to, ooh, no, nobody likes CJ Stroud. Oh, he's terrible. It's just, it's a little weird.
One that I'm going to be wrong on, I'm guessing because of how the line has moved away from me, is under 4.5 quarterbacks. I have a hard time seeing Hooker go in the first round, but honestly, like if the guy can play at a league average level on a rookie deal, that's tremendous value for a team. And then you can afford to build a team around the guy. So
somebody's going to trade into the late first round so they can get that extra year on Hendon Hooker and make sure they have him in his age 30 season.
I mean, God, it kind of makes sense. What else? I had a couple. I will say on draft betting, just for the listeners at home, you have to understand that there's a 99% chance that something happens. Laying minus 700 is value.
Mm-hmm.
Not super early in the draft process, but when you see stuff go to minus 1,000, minus 1,500 and get pulled, there's a pretty good indication that people that are trying to make real money on this stuff, they're not guessing. And that's not me telling you to chase the steam on this, but I would strongly advise against, oh, look, I can get plus 700 here. That's great value. Is it? Do you really think that that this thing is going to minus 1,500 based on opinion? Just, I'm not really a long shot draft better this late in the process.
So you're not paying attention to Reddit chat rumors that Will Levis is telling his family that he's going number 1 overall? You're not buying into that? Come on, bud.
Oh, I took a little piece, but it was 40-1. I saw it move and I got some 25, but I really low limits.
See, that just goes kind of show to how crazy the markets are for NFL draft stuff to begin with, because something like that could impact the lines that much. But that's also why they don't let you bet too much.
Right.
Yeah.
But
also, if you bet with a bookie, there's not a lot of betting stuff going on right now. I mean, most people don't bet hockey. NBA playoff betting, sure, but if you kill your guy on NFL draft props, that's a pretty good way to lose your account over the summer. Combine that with killing them on strikeout props, and that's a great way to not have an account to bet in come football season.
I like for Thursday night, I like the under 3.5 on wide receivers to go in the first round. I think it's going to be somewhat of a contrary to what we've seen in recent years. I do not think there are going to be a lot of wide receivers going early. I think that Jackson Smith and Jigba will get taken. I think that Quentin Johnston will get taken. I'm fairly confident Jordan Addison gets taken, maybe, but even that I'm not super highly sure about. After that, I don't know that there's another wide receiver anybody's going to take a shot out of the first. And I also like the over 5.5 on offensive linemen, because I think we're going to see a lot of them going on Thursday night.
Yeah. And I'm not convinced it's a great tight end year. I just think the tight ends are getting kind of beefed up or pumped up with helium because of the fact that it's not a great receiver year. Zay Flowers is a guy that could bust your bet.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the size thing is going to scare people off of him, though. But that's the thing. Like, this is just a small wide receiver class, period. Like, there are no real, like, kind of big body freaks that we've seen in recent years where they're fast and huge. Most of the big guys in this class are more possession-y types. Another draft question here from Richard Aitchison. Time travel question. Who gets drafted higher next season? Joe Milton, Quinn Ewers, or Jaden Daniels? This one to me is easy, but I want to know what you guys think.
I'll go Quinn Ewers.
Yeah,
if he holds off Arch Manning, he's the starter like all year at Texas. He'll put up big numbers. He's a very natural thrower of the football. I think he'll be the highest drafted.
I would agree. If he comes out, that means he's probably had a pretty nice year, and it'll be yours.
Yeah, I'm with you. I know Jordan wants.
Yeah, Jordan's mad at us right now.
Who's the highest drafted quarterback currently on LSU's roster? Daniels or Nussmeier whenever he comes out?
I saw that you like Garrett Nussmeier a lot, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
I think it could be Nussmeier, but just based on what I've already seen, I got to go with Jaden Daniels because I just haven't seen enough of Nussmeier. Here's a little breaking news here for you, bud. Emmanuel Pregon to USC. Fight on. Is this a big deal?
Yeah, I actually think it is a pretty big deal. So if you look at USC, they need to do better on the offensive line this year. They went out, they attacked the portal. They got a couple kids from Florida who were good players in the SEC, right? They got Michael Tarquin. They got Ethan White. Now, Ethan White's not going to play. Some kind of, I don't know, medical thing or something. I'm not totally clear why he's not going to play at USC. Tarquin was a dude who was good enough to come in and unseat Cortland Ford for USC, and Kentucky, who desperately needed a right tackle, came and snapped up Cortland Ford immediately because Cortland Ford got beat out by Tarquin and hit the portal. So to me, that shows that Tarquin, who was a good player for Florida already, is a nice hit for the Trojans. But because Ethan White's not going to play, they still have a spot they could upgrade at guard. And Pregon is actually a really good player by Mountain West standards. So to me, that is a nice thing. If you're Caleb Williams, you're like, yes, there we go, big time. Yeah, like that's some really nice work they've done in the transfer portal on the offensive line. Yeah, good job by USC.
We're very proud of you, USC. We haven't talked about on the show yet. It's pretty amazing. We haven't talked about the college football playoff. So here's a question about the college football playoff. I do not have a name from the question. So whoever, I think, did Chip do this or Jordan? Whoever did it, just wow, epic failure on your part. From random person. Love the show, guys. Question for the crew. Under the new 12-team playoff, will there ever be a team to go 17-0, meaning they go undefeated but don't get a top 4 seed and then proceed to win it all? If so, who will be the first team to do it? Go Dogs, by the way.
I don't think it'll be them because Dogs can't do it because they'll be a top 4 seed. So like you have to think like it's got to be somebody not SEC or Big Ten.
It's got to be like a G5 team.
Yeah. Or it could be a Pac-12. It could be an ACC. I think one of those teams. I mean,
but don't you think
probably getting a 1 seed there too?
I was gonna say I think like an undefeated P5 team, even in a diminished version of the Pac-12 and ACC at whatever point, I think an undefeated P5 is going to get a top 4 seed. I don't, unless there are 4 other undefeated teams. So I feel like it would have to be a G5 team. So for that G5 team to be undefeated and then run through the playoff from the very first round, no, that's never going to happen.
Agreed. I mean, if you're being rated, well, okay, hold on. There is a way this could go down. It's that Ohio State 2014 type way. The team is undefeated. They lose their stud quarterback. The committee can take injury into account. So it expects that the quarterback, doesn't have the ability to play in the playoffs. It's incorrect in that expectation. The guy who helped them go undefeated in the regular season is back in time, or maybe like they win their first round game and he comes back to win the next 2 games for them. So that would be a way. And obviously Joe in the chat, who we're featuring on screen now, check us out, youtube.com/cover3. Notre Dame in theory, because Notre Dame cannot get a first round bye. So definitely the Irish are the other way this happens. Like, do you guys think a G5 team could do it? Because like the G5 is getting worse and worse by the year because they keep getting snatched up by the P5.
I mean, I
think it's like a Washington or Oregon.
Yeah.
You know, like in a weak Pac-12 without USC, UCLA, I could see a one-loss Big Ten or SEC champ being ranked over them. The question is, you'd still need two other undefeateds. You could maybe have a Clemson or Florida State undefeated ACC. You know, it's hard to envision. Notre Dame, I think, is the best candidate. I think we all should have jumped on that one right away.
Didn't even think. I was thinking of conference champions.
Me too.
But I think 17-0, 16-0. I think it's just going to be very rare that we see undefeated teams, period, in the new format. Because, like, there's this reason you don't see NFL teams go undefeated. The more games you play, eventually you're going to lose, especially when you get to a playoff and you start running up against other elite teams. And that late in the season, like, let's say Georgia is, crushing it, killing it in 2023. If the playoff existed this year, they sleepwalk through that schedule they're playing this year. They're undefeated. They get to the SEC title game. They get tested. They win. Then they get to the playoff and somebody gets hurt. You're just kind of tired and battered. It's a long season. A lot of things can happen. A lot of variables come into play.
Oh, Matt Hembry says Notre Dame doesn't have conference championships, so they actually can't get to 17, which is also true.
Oh, see? Oh, look at that. We were right. We knew that. That's why we weren't including Notre Dame.
No, clearly, like, don't want this to happen again. But if we had another, like, pandemic type season where the Irish had to kind of, shack up with the ACC again, and then they won the ACC, would they be bye eligible?
It's a good question. Hopefully,
because then they could
asterisk section.
Yeah,
I think you could see. I disagree with Tom. 16 game. I think you could see until we get some form of parity where there's this cap or something. You'll still have teams like Georgia, Bama, Ohio State just have way more talent than everybody else.
Oh, I think you'll still see them. I just think they're going to be a lot rarer than we see undefeated champions now. Here's another good question.
That many in this era, have we?
We just had one this year.
Oh, I know we just had one, but before that,
yeah, all the time. There was like 3 undefeated teams in the playoffs 2 years ago. Here's one kind of the other side from Rob Smalley. Conversely, what's the worst record someone will have and win the whole thing? Like, will we have a 9-7 New York Giants Super Bowl champion? Oh God, I can't wait for that show if we do.
Let's go. And it'll be great. It'll be so good for college football.
Which 3-loss SEC team is going to win a national title first?
It will. That's where it most likely will come from. Alabama, let's say they started Jalen Milroe, and it was a disaster for a couple games. Then they lost one more, but they snuck in Ty Simpson, or there's somebody else down the road. They discover a quarterback. Absolutely, it can happen.
I think it'll be -3.
Yeah,
I have a hard time seeing a 4-loss team get into the playoff. I really have a hard time seeing a 3-loss team get into the playoff due to just how subservient the committee is to the loss column. But like we gave the example of what if the committee thought this quarterback was out, but he's actually not out. The reverse of that. So, hey, this team started off the year 0-2, 0-3 because their Caleb Williams was out, and then once he came back, they ran that thing. They won their conference title. Blah 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 blah. Clearly, like, they've demonstrated a lot, like you see with the basketball committee.
I can't wait to talk about a team that's peaking at the right time. Speaking of peaking at the right time, Wisconsin questions. They're peaking at the right time, and they're coming up next.
You should stay.
I didn't think that this is what we were doing. I thought I had this handled when she shows up in my home.
If you tell someone to stop calling you the 20th time you pick up, what you've taught them is that 20 calls is what it takes.
I'm not going to be ignored, Dan.
I did not kill that woman, and I'm going to prove it.
This is a wild game of survival.
Wow.
Pacey Witter's in trouble.
Man.
I never thought I'd see Pacey from Dawson's Creek in the lead of a sexual thriller. Never in a million years.
Hey, now Pacey slept with his teacher. Don't forget.
That is true. Maybe I should have seen it coming.
He was a player. Also, he lived down the street from my wife back in the day. All right, first question here, because there's got two questions about Wisconsin. People obviously interested. It is the first spring with Luke Fickell. They're completely changing things, so it's a topic of conversation. Love this podcast and appreciate the work you guys do. Thank you, especially in the off season and then instant reaction shows on Saturday nights. I consider myself a very realistic Wisconsin fan. I want to know what a very realistic Wisconsin fan like. What's the stereotype of that? However, I can't help but get caught up in the hype of a Luke Fickell and the new look offense. SP Plus and other metrics have Wisconsin as a top 20-25 team in 2023. It's a lot of 20s in one sentence. I feel Wisconsin is slightly undervalued and they have a favorable schedule. My question is, what are your expectations for Wisconsin this year? Do you feel top 20 is a reasonable expectation? Also, how weird will it be for each of you to see Wisconsin run the Dairy Raid offense? Thanks, guys. Holden.
Is that what they're calling it? I love it.
Yeah.
It is. I like it. I haven't heard that.
That's pretty awesome. I'm glad he likes the instant reaction shows. Let us know in the chat or in the reviews, like if we did a live, like listener appreciation style instant reaction show from like a theater or a bar that like we rent out the stage and whatnot. Would you guys show up? Would you buy tickets ahead of time? Maybe from like, I don't know, an opening game of the year or something like that. Just let us know. I think it'd be pretty cool to do like a listener hangout, grab a couple beers, go on stage, recap the day if we can. So anyway, just let us know. Danny, what expectations for Wisconsin this year?
So the question was top 20, top 25. So, I mean, that's basically you got to be 8-4 and win your bowl game, 9-4. I think it's a reasonable expectation.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm bullish on Wisconsin. A little bit, I don't want to say concerned with Tanner Mordecai's performance in the spring game. It wasn't the best weather. But again, like that might be some of the issue that you could crop up in November when it is cold, potentially windy. Is that going to be an issue? But I also know Luke Fickell, defensive-minded guy. Like that's probably one of those ones where what takes priority in this, and it's just natural. It happens all over the place. When you see a coach that's defensive mind, sometimes that ends up coming out on top. It's a priority. I'm not that worried about the turnover bug yet. If there's a time to throw them, it's in the spring game. But it was not pretty. But yeah, I'm bullish on Wisconsin.
Yeah, I don't think top 20 is unreasonable at all. He mentions the schedule. He's right. It is, as far as a lot of schedules are considered pretty favorable. Like their draw from the East, they get Ohio State, which sucks, but they get Ohio State in Madison, and the other two Eastern teams they play are Indiana and Rutgers, which there aren't two other Eastern teams you want to play more than Indiana and Rutgers. And also their road schedule is pretty light. They get Wazoo on the road out of conference. They open at
revenge
Purdue
game.
Yeah, they open at Purdue in Big Ten. Then they get Illinois and Indiana and Minnesota on the road. None of those are road games where you're sitting there saying, oh, they've got no shot in hell of winning those games. In fact, you'd expect them to split them at worst. So if they can handle business at home, split their road games, they're probably going to be a top 20 team.
They're double-digit favorites in 6 games.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty nice floor.
That said, the other part of the question was, how weird will it be for each of you to see Wisconsin run the Dairy Raid? Very weird. Very, very, very weird. I have been watching Wisconsin football for 30 years. It has looked the same every time, except for like a couple years there where Gary Anderson came in. And that's also part of my concern, because I remember what it looked like when Gary Anderson did kind of try to change it up a little bit. It did not go all that well. So I don't know. I think they've got a great coaching staff. I think Luke Fickell's a very good coach. I think he's brought very good coaches with him. I expect it will work, but I do wonder if there could be some early bumps in the process.
Oh, to follow up on the Colorado thing, I think Adam Munster-Tiger, our Colorado guy from Buff Stampede, who was on summer school last year and is confirmed to be on summer school again this year, and I'm really excited for that one. He was asked by one of our national writers to rank or rate the Colorado transfers on a scale of 1 to 5. 5 meaning the transfer hurts. 1, it'll have no impact on the team, in his opinion. But like he's at all the practices and has covered the team for decades. So I don't think there's anybody out there doing a better job on this. Jordan Tyson, the leading receiver, got a full 5. Lamonius Craig, the guy that went off in the spring game, got a 4. Linebacker Aubrey Smith got a 4. Jalen Sammy, that's the starting nose guard from yesterday, got a 4. A couple guys got threes. Running back Deion Smith. Tavion Beasley, that's the guy that came from Jackson State. He got a 3. Chase Sowell, I assume, got a 3 just because you don't really want to have 7 true freshmen out of your 10 receivers on the depth chart. That's not necessarily great, especially if Hunter is one of those guys, because he's probably going to have to play some defense. And then Jason Oliver, another corner, got a 3, as well as Tyron Taylor got a 3. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's 10 guys. The other dudes all got like 1s or 2s, which I think kind of speaks to it. Travis Gray, he put a 2 on. Travis Gray is apparently just, in his opinion, I'm guessing just big, maybe not good.
Here, Danny, I know you've got to go soon. So here's a question for you from the Real Coconut. What will it take for DK to join the Cover 3 Beautiful Beard Club? I feel like there needs to be a bet on the line.
Yeah, a bet would be great. Plus an endorsement for Just for Men. Because I get
brush-in?
Yeah.
I got a free sample of that. I'm thinking of trying it. Yeah.
It works.
Remember some of the people that grew, like I think Dave Letterman or Stewart, like one of those guys when they grew out their beards, like, who is that? Like that guy looks old, gray beard, like big time. But if we get a Just for Men endorsement, I'll grow it out thick and proud. Let's go.
The wife would sign off on it if you get the endorsement.
Oh yeah, she likes it because I've done it before. She likes the more scruffy beard, like the shorter beard. She doesn't like the bushy beard.
Gotcha.
But I mean, you got to do it for the team, right?
Yeah,
do it.
Sure.
Yeah. I'll do it.
We got to come up with like some facial hair bets then for the season.
Definitely. Some good pictures with a beard. All right. See you guys
later. There was the other Wisconsin question. It's probably, this is more tilted towards you anyway, but I noted again, another no name. Was it Jordan? Was this you or Chip? Again, you have failed the show. Noticed some of the top offensive line recruits from Wisconsin trending away from the Badgers. Is this something to keep an eye on for Fickell? Could it be a result of a possible change in offensive philosophy?
It's something to keep an eye on. I don't know that it's necessarily something to worry about at this point. It's also just across the board a poor offensive line year this year compared to the prior year, which I thought was very strong. Like for instance, probably both tackles Miami signed are going to be starters immediately, and that from what I've heard, they feel good about them. This year, I'm not really sure we have that. I think we had 1 offensive tackle in our top 50 players in the country, which is very low because that is a premium position. Next year, there's a lot of really good guys out there. So what we don't know is the staff's exact opinion of these guys that are slipping away, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
this is
always
always
that word.
This is one of my theories though about like the Big Ten West in general and why they play a certain way, and they always have, because I feel like I think it is I think it is an interesting point in that Wisconsin got to where it was because it took advantage of the type of players that surrounded it in the area. It built an offense to suit its recruiting area. Now, in this day and age, that might not be nearly as important as it was 30 years ago, but like the offensive lines in this portion of the country are producing, high schools are producing offensive linemen that are, like ground and pound 3 yards in a cloud of dust type of stuff. It's not really spread offensive linemen. So I do wonder if that will have an impact. I think Michigan struggled with that when Rich Rod came in. I think Wisconsin struggled with it when Gary Anderson took in. I think Nebraska's been struggling with it ever since they joined the Big Ten, and they kept trying to play the same style that they were playing in the Big 12 when they were able to recruit down to Texas. So I don't know if 1 year is a sign of anything bad or coming where other players are, trending more towards programs like Iowa and Illinois and Minnesota that are still kind of playing that same way that Wisconsin used to. And I'm not saying I don't think they can recruit over at Wisconsin and be just fine, but I do think it is something worth keeping an eye on. Another recruiting question for you here. This is from Adam Souter. With Michigan now having the #1 class in 24, is this just early momentum and a quantity over quality thing, or do you see them carrying this thing through and finishing in the top 3?
Oh, okay. So they're asking for like staying power ratings for the recruiting rankings right now. It is April.
Mm-hmm. I need a hard and fast prediction. Where will Michigan's 24 class finish ranked?
Top 3. Top 3 is hard, man.
Yes.
Like top 3 because there's also the volume element that plays into this. But they're in on a lot of top guys. They're in on Aaron Scott, one of the top cornerbacks. That kind of has Ohio State people freaking out a little bit. Just how well Michigan may or may not be doing on this one. What's their win total going to be? 10
and a half-ish?
10 and a half. Yeah,
Yeah.
10 juice over, 10 and a half, maybe slight juice under. I would I think they're going to have a decent shot. Like they have better coaches recruiting now. I think they're selling their player development extremely well on the recruiting trail, and they're also selling their winning, which is great, right? So I think they're going to have a real shot to finish top 3. I think they have an excellent shot to finish like top 5 or 6.
Here's one that could get us a soundbite. We'll end the show on this one because this stuff always gets the people going. From Victor. What speeds up Saban's retirement more? Winning another national title within the next 3 years or not winning a national title in the next 3 years? I personally think he wants to go out with a natty.
I was going to say quarterback recruiting, but
I was going to say, do you think it matters? Do you think 3 years is kind of just 3 years at this point either way? Like, how long is he going to go?
I mean, do we think that like, the number of titles drives him? I think it's like being able to craft a team each year and competing against yourself. Some of these guys stay on message pretty well, but like if you don't think Nick really believes what he says in terms of like, hey, you have to be the best you can be, right? Everybody has a job, you have to do it. I think he loves competing. And talk to guys who have played basketball with him. With like if you know guys who've been on those staffs, they say he's really competitive in those staff basketball games, even though he's mid-60s now, or is he 70 yet? Like
70s.
Yeah.
Or no, I don't know. He might still be in his 60s.
I mean, I think the guy is super competitive. I don't think that he would be like, okay, I got one more. I'm going to hang it up.
He's
now,
71.
What if he realized he couldn't do it? 71. Wow. Like, what if he realized, like, okay, I'm not going to get back to the mountaintop? Like, would he be okay with not winning?
He's also 5'6", so I mean, I feel like I could lock Saban down. That's just maybe.
I saw that 6'2" again on the annual physical yesterday.
Yeah, I just tower over him. I'd be like, "Get out of here, little boy! Get that weak stuff out of here."
So what if he starts losing? Like, can he handle that? We really haven't seen Saban lose for a prolonged period of time, right? You had 2010 where they lost 3 or 4 ball games and they were super talented, just didn't put it together. Similar question. If Deion has his own media company, how are you going to spin it? Maybe they go 5-7, right? Like, what if they go 2-10? Like that type of thing. What does that look like? And Deion, as a player, by the way, a lot of success. I mean, think about where he played and when. Atlanta was probably not great in the early 90s. I'm trying to remember now what the NFL was like back then. San Fran in 94 was pretty damn good, if I recall. Dallas Cowboys, mid to late 90s, definitely didn't suck. Washington, I don't remember for 1 year. And then Baltimore, early 2000s, Baltimore was pretty damn good as well. And I mean, he had it on easy mode at Jackson State because he had a bunch of Power 5 players in one of the worst FCS leagues out there. Like, how does he handle losing? I'm really actually kind of fascinated to see that.
It'll be interesting to see. Yeah, I think that's a good place to wrap it up. We will be back tomorrow with an NFL draft special ahead of the first round of the NFL draft beginning on Thursday night. So we hope that you show us. We will be live again at 11 a.m. Eastern here on youtube.com/cover3. And again, if you're watching us right now and you still haven't done it, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We will see you tomorrow. He's Bud Elliott. You can follow him on Twitter at BudElliott3. I'm Tom Fernelli. You can follow me at Tom Fernelli. He was Danny Cannell. You can follow him at Danny Cannell. And Chip is moving into a house at Chip Patterson, or Chip_Patterson. You can follow him and his adventures in his new home there. So until tomorrow, thanks for joining us.